Ayanokoji Kiyotaka and Light Yagami, the White masterpiece versus the god of the new world. These are two of the most popular intelligent characters in anime, and for a good reason. Both have demonstrated extraordinary intellect and consistent feats of strategy throughout their series. Whether it's Light manipulating international law enforcement, systematically eliminating every obstacle in his path, and ultimately defeating the world's greatest detective, Lawliet, or Kiyotaka Ayanokōji surviving and excelling within the most brutal educational system ever devised, outmaneuvering Japan's top prodigies at Advanced Nurturing High School. Both characters stand as undeniable geniuses who have earned their reputation. Now, the question that naturally arises is who among these two brilliant minds is genuinely the smarter character? And if they were to face each other on an equal footing, who would emerge as the ultimate victor in the battle of wits? But before that, if you enjoy this type of content, the goal is 20k, so if you enjoy, sub up. Let's start by giving insight into how smart Light Yagami, the self-proclaimed god of the new world, is. Light Yagami was seen as a prodigy from a young age. He consistently ranked at the top of his class, excelling in his studies and impressing teachers and peers with his exceptional intelligence. This is a remarkable display of his flawed intelligence because he has grown to be this way without any interference or particular curriculum. From even the first chapter, Light has shown to place first nationally in college entrance exams. He has grown used to such a level of performance that until he receives the Death Note, he is bored with life and feels little to no stimulation. Light's true genius will not be fully realized until the day he stumbled upon the Death Note, the supernatural notebook with the power to kill anyone whose name is written within its page. With this newfound power, Light set on a mission to rid the world of evil, dubbing himself Kira and effectively positioning himself as a godlike figure who would judge and execute those he deemed unworthy of living. But Light's brilliance was not limited to simply writing names in the Death Note. No, he demonstrated a level of cleverness and adaptability throughout every sort of his schemes. A common argument to dismiss Light's intelligence is his mistake in handling the Lind L. Taylor situation. He unintentionally revealed a significant amount of information to Lawliet, which ultimately led the detective to discover his true identity and put him in his line of sight through his lack of composure. But this situation allowed us to see many of Light's most significant attributes: his adaptability, creativity, manipulation, and deception. Despite being a high school student, Light was significantly adept at adapting to a wide range of challenges, and shrewd about the complexities of his journey he would have to take to ensure his victory. He keenly used his seemingly disadvantaged position in the aftermath of the Lind L. Taylor to his advantage, cleverly manipulating the police and engaging in deceptive tactics to ultimately get closer to L. His ultimate goal was to learn L's true identity through the police and then use the Death Note to kill him. Light employed various clever tactics from chapter 4 to 15 of the manga to achieve this. For example, when L began to suspect that Kira was a student, Light changed the timing of his killings to throw off the investigation team. He also exploited the natural distrust between L and the Japanese police force to create a rift, furthering his agenda. However, Light's most outstanding achievement was dealing with the FBI agents L has sent to Japan to assist with the investigation. Recognizing them as a threat, Light orchestrated a bus hijacking incident that allowed him to identify and isolate one of the FBI agents, Ray Pemba. He then used blackmail to force Pemba to provide the names and information of all the other agents, which he then used to eliminate the entire FBI task force systematically. Remarkably, through all of this, Light could maintain his innocence without evidence pointing to him. When the sudden occurrence of Ray's fiancée, Naomi Musara, appeared to hinder his plans potentially, Light, albeit shaken up, narrowly escaped his demise through his persuasion and subtle manipulation of Misora throughout the whole situation, allowing him to kill her and finally put the pair of lovers to rest. Put in the precarious situation, L even went to the lengths of bugging Light's room, putting 64 cameras in it to judge the legitimacy of Light possibly being a suspect. This trap appeared to be seemingly inescapable if Light didn't write names during the night to murder criminals. L would be able to deduce that the suspect was Kira due to 0 deaths occurring that day, and just as so, if Light wrote the names as usual, he'd be caught. But through sheer wit, Light found his killing method untraceable even when 64 cameras were in his room by resourcefully using potato chips to conceal himself. As L began to employ more tactics and strategies, such as revealing himself to Light and the appearance of the second Kira, Misa Amane, we began to see more of Light's ability to work under pressure and navigate through multiple facets of the Kira case. Once Misa was arrested under the suspicion of being the second Kira, and L was slowly but surely creeping up on Light, our favorite serial killer had to create a plan to deceive the Kira task force further and throw L off his tracks. And here, we see the formation of Light's ultimate plan: memory loss. One of Light's most vital traits is his ability to plan, especially creative planning, which is apparent in his massive plan to force suspicion off of him and Misa to ensnare L. A string of complex preparations led to Light relinquishing the Death Note to someone who would use it for greed, i.e. the Yotsuba group, to commit killings to ensure he would shield Misa while his memories were gone. This required him to effectively predict all of the general actions that L and the Kira task force would take for numerous days. He convinced L of his innocence by willingly submitting to confinement and surveillance, all the while secretly planning his next move, which was a verbal command for Luke to begin switching ownership of Light's Death Note. Now, Light has no memory of the Death Note, and as his old self predicted, would eventually want to catch this new Kira and work alongside L. In this Yotsuba arc, we see just how strong of a detective Light is and witness an underrated aspect of his intelligence, his reasoning ability. Throughout chapters 37 to 45, a Light who possesses no memories of his previous actions or situations while having the Death Note was able to make solid deductions and inductions about the Yotsuba group, to the point that in certain instances, both he and L were able to come to similar conclusions at the same time. Most notably, he could pinpoint L's exact thought process regarding the possibility that Kira could be feigning memory loss while transferring his power to another person so that L's suspicion will no longer have any evidence. This isn't to say that Light is just as good at being a detective or possesses the same level of reasoning as L, who is in a completely different dimension from him, but it is a thing to note. Interestingly enough, in Death Note's volume How to Read, databook written by Tsugumi Ohba, Light is stated to have a higher knowledge stat and a relative creativity stat to L. Perhaps this is more inclined to suggest that Light may have potential as a detective in his own right. The Yotsuba arc would soon come to a close with Light's infamous just as planned, regaining his memories. When L tested the 13-day rule by having Higuchi, the Yotsuba Kira, write a criminal's name in a Death Note, Light used that opportunity to kill Higuchi and reclaim ownership of the notebook. Light's ingenuity shone through once more as he devised a clever method to write Higuchi's name in the Death Note without being directly observed by L. By using a piece of the Death Note hidden in his watch, Light was able to prick his finger, use his blood as ink, and write Higuchi's name while ostensibly just holding the notebook. This allowed Light to regain the Death Note's ownership and all his memories without L realizing what had happened. Furthermore, Light demonstrated his remarkable foresight and strategic planning. Before his confinement, he had Luke secretly inscribe 2 false rules in the Death Note, one stating that the user would die if the notebook were destroyed, and another imposing a 13-day rule for continued use. These fabricated rules helped solidify Light's alibi and convince L of his innocence when he and Misa were released from custody. As the investigation progressed, Light continued to outmaneuver L at every turn. When L proposed using the Death Note to test the 13-day rule, Light manipulated the situation to have Rem, Misa's Shinigami, kill L and Watari. This masterful stroke removed his greatest adversary and allowed Light to position himself as L's successor, further cementing his control of the investigation. Light's ability to remain calm and composed under pressure was also displayed. Even after L's death, when the rest of the task force was thrown into disarray, Light quickly regained his composure and asserted his leadership, convincing the team that he would continue L's work and avenge him, and thus turning their sorrow into conviction. It's just excellent manipulation, deception, and strategic ability throughout. For 5 years, Light would reign over the world through fear and justice until L's successor, Nier and Mello, seek to take on the Kira case and dethrone the self-proclaimed god of the new world. Throughout the second half of Death Note, Light continued to showcase his strong manipulation and ability to understand others emotionally. If not for his management of Misa, it would also be how he was able to seamlessly seduce Kiyomi Takada into becoming the goddess of the new world, or how he was able to recruit Teru Mikami into becoming his loyal servant who would execute his schemes with amazing efficiency. Effectively, throughout part 2, Light remained strong in his planning, strategic ability, and ability to understand the emotions and thought processes of others and control them strongly. In fact, he could adapt and react accordingly to Mello's seamlessly reckless and aggressive actions while simultaneously being targeted by Nier. However, there is one fatal flaw to Light Yagami, his hubris. For 5 years, he had been unchallenged, and his most recent victory against L had been his crowning moment to ascend to figurative godhood, and those factors to his already inflated sense of self, and it's a recipe for disaster. Light saw Nier and Mello as inferior successors of L that even if combined together, would be no match for him. Light's strategy for the final showdown to kill off Nier was incredibly intricate and well thought out. He correctly deduced then anticipated Nier's strategies and countermeasures, setting Mikami up as a carefully controlled pawn to carry out the killings, while Takada handled logistics. Light ensured that every apparent contingency was accounted for, from Mello's potential interference to the possibility of near tampering with Mikami's Death Note. However, Light's fatal flaw was his overconfidence in his intelligence and his inability to control his subordinates fully. While his strategy was sound, it relied heavily on Mikami's unwavering loyalty and adherence to his instructions. When Mikami unexpectedly deviated from the plan to secure more pages of the real Death Note, it created an opening that Nier could exploit. Stephen Giovanni's covert operation to obtain the real Death Note allowed Nier to execute his plan flawlessly, exposing Mikami as the true ex-killer and forcing Light into a corner. Despite Light's best efforts to manipulate the situation, the loss of the Death Note and Mikami's deviation from the plan ultimately led to his downfall. In the end, Light's hubris and inability to account for the unpredictable actions of his followers proved to be his undoing. More than his meticulous planning and strategic brilliance was needed to overcome the combined efforts of Nier and Mello, who were able to outmaneuver him through careful analysis, calculated risks, and exploiting the weaknesses in Light's seemingly impenetrable scheme. Light's pure wit and creative prowess were fully displayed throughout the Death Note manga. His journey, marked by stunning victories and tragic downfall, solidifies his status as one of the most captivating, complex, and intelligent characters in anime and manga. Kiyotaka Ayanokōji was born with a unique condition that sets him apart from the rest of humanity: perfect memory. According to Volume 0 of the light novel, from the moment he opened his eyes as a newborn, Ayanokōji possessed an extraordinary ability to recall every detail of his life with startling clarity. He remembers the color of the ceiling above him, the first thoughts that crossed his mind, and even the subtle movements of his tiny fingers. By age 2, Ayanokōji's memory had already surpassed the bounds of normal human cognition. He listened intently to conversations around him, absorbing every word and storing it for future understanding. His ability to retain information was so vast that researchers described it as limitless, transcending the usual constraints of memory and learning. Professor Suzukake, astounded by Ayanokōji's prodigious memory, remarked on his implications for his learning ability. Unlike ordinary individuals whose capacity for learning is limited by the constant cycle of forgetting and learning, Ayanokōji's memory knows no bounds. He possesses an insatiable hunger for knowledge, with each new piece of information seamlessly integrated into his vast reservoir of memory. This phenomenon is unprecedented in the annals of human history, defying conventional explanations and challenging our understanding of cognition. For all of his childhood, Ayanokoji was raised in the White Room. He aims to train students to become dominant influencers in the world, with vast knowledge and intelligence that rival or exceed natural human limits, which underwent the level 10 beta curriculum, or at least level 10 or above. In the White Room, each generation is assigned a level of sorts. Takaya Yagami and Ichika Amasawa of the 5th generation underwent a level 4 curriculum, and Professor Suzukake suggests that level 5 or 6 is the human limit, as anything above that can cause horrific psychological damage and make students drop out immediately. Ayanokoji not only survived a curriculum 5 levels above the natural human limit, but he excelled so much that researchers were highly confident that this curriculum didn't even touch the surface of his potential. To show how absurdly rapid Ayanokoji's development was, at age 2, he could comprehend verbal information considerably, as demonstrated by his performance in the Gummy Bear test. His ability to observe and adapt to patterns in this environment showcased early signs of high reasoning ability. At age 4, he was able to write in 5 different notations, excelling in calligraphy and demonstrating advanced fine motor skills and cognitive ability. At only age 5, Kiyotaka was studying equality conditions of addictive and synergistic averages, a topic solely discussed around the same time as Taylor series equations. Taylor series is a calculus 2 subject typically taught in the undergraduate level. According to the schedules in Volume 0, Ayanokoji learned many subjects at the university to graduate level that he knows perfectly due to his perfect memory, such as natural sciences, mathematics, geometry, languages such as Japanese and English, economic studies, and political studies. He states that he has so much knowledge that it will be more than what someone would know in their entire lifetime. Volume 0, as much of his backstory shows us, it also shows Ayanokoji's strongest trait, his adaptability. To survive in the White Room, Ayanokoji needed to develop a mentality far removed from conventional emotional responses. From the moment he entered the White Room beta curriculum, his primary focus shifted to one thing: survival. But it wasn't just about enduring the physical trials. Ayanokoji realized early on that emotional regulation was equally crucial, if not more so. He quickly adapted to eliminate unnecessary elements of basic human needs, even fundamental levels of interpersonal communication. From literal infancy, he understood the futility of crying for help in an environment where no one would come to his aid. Consciously controlling his emotions became second nature, with Ayanokoji molding his emotionless expression into his natural state. While others may have succumbed to emotional turmoil, Ayanokoji saw it as a hindrance to survival. In a place where brutality was the norm and empathy a liability, he honed his ability to control emotions to an unprecedented degree. From age 4, he witnessed and experienced events that would traumatize most adults. Children being beaten until they lost consciousness was a regular occurrence, yet Ayanokoji understood that dwelling on the cruelty of the situation was futile. Instead, he focused on avoiding punishment and mastering the art of emotional detachment. As Ayanokoji reflected, this was just the beginning of a routine designed to strip away empathy and instinctual responses. He recognized the need to eliminate anything that might hinder his chances of survival, even if it meant sacrificing the ability to experience joy, sorrow, anger, or pleasure. And then, suddenly, he was thrust into the real world. After living in the White Room, a brutal lab rat facility where he had to excel for over 14 years, he was finally freed and forced to fend for himself at ANHS. This meritocratic government-funded school houses the smartest students in Japan. Throughout the beginning volumes, and given the context of Volume 0, Ayanokoji's adaptability is absolutely broken. Despite spending most of his life in isolation, shielded from normal human interactions, Ayanokoji seamlessly integrates into the complex social ecosystem of high school life. His ability to fabricate an entire persona, complete with genuine emotions and multiple mentalities, is nothing short of remarkable. In the span of mere months, he transitions from the emotionless facade he cultivated in the White Room to a seemingly ordinary high school student, capable of laughing, crying, and even sweating under stress on command. We know this is true in the early light novel volumes because other characters react to Ayanokoji's reactions as if he did the things he wanted to do, even if they're rather awkward. Ayanokoji's profound ability to control and influence others' emotions without speaking is underrated. Whether it be through his manipulation of Kei in Year 1 Volume 4, where afterward she states that his aura was reminiscent of a serial killer, or in Year 2 Volume 4, where he can project his killing intent onto Nagumo to manipulate him further and influence his reactions, or in Year 1 Volume 2, where Sakura feels a soothing aura emitting from him whenever he tells her to do things for him. But just like Light, Ayanokoji is extremely proficient at manipulating others through strategies or schemes. He was able to completely outmaneuver Ryuuen with ease, from Year 1 Volume 3 all the way to Year 1 Volume 7 through a variety of deceptive and concealed tactics. That the more Ryuuen tried to get closer to solving who this X was that was interfering with his plans and controlling Class D, the more he would be trapped in Ayanokoji's schemes, which he flawlessly controlled Ryuuen for more than an entire month to act in ways he had already predetermined way before. In Year 1 Volume 9, Ayanokoji orchestrated a complex strategy during the in-boarding exam to manipulate his classmates into expelling Yamauchi while preserving his position. By subtly influencing key players like Kei and Manabu, he created a narrative that shifted blame away from himself and onto Yamauchi. Leveraging his understanding of his classmates' motivation and alliances, Ayanokoji ensured his survival while strategically engineering the expulsion of Yamauchi without him having to lift a finger. In Year 1 Volume 6, Ayanokoji spread a rumor of Ichinose in Ryuen's name for numerous triangulating purposes. Yet it was only through a single tactic that he indirectly and completely manipulated so many influential leaders. These are just a few examples of Ayanokoji's mastery at manipulating others through schemes and strategies, but this doesn't hold a candle to his depth of understanding of people's emotions. One of his most impressive displays of emotional intelligence and understanding of others is in Year 1 Volume 11, where he completely saw through Yousuke Hirata's violent and tumultuous attitude after Yamauchi's explosion, and completely rewired his thought process after simply talking to him once, and making his reality clash with his senseless idealism. By just seeing how Hirata reacted after Yamauchi was expelled, he was able to make him change the hardened ideals that he held for over 4 years of habits in a single conversation. And of course, we cannot forget his complete psychoanalysis of Kei Karuizawa. This can be analogous of Light's manipulation of Misa, as they both involve our protagonist manipulating a vulnerable girl to become a tool for them. Still, Ayanokoji's manipulation of Kei is an example of just how well he can manipulate people he's only just met. Considering that Kei had a negative opinion of Ayanokoji before he employed his tactics on her, yet as soon as they finish, she completely accepts his control over her. This is primarily because Ayanokoji is so excellent at perceiving the inner workings, motivations, and flaws of others upon an interaction or two with them. This is especially evident in Year 1 Volume 1, where he can completely cold read Suzune and understand her superiority complex, how it relates to her admiration of Manabu Horikita, and how she can actualize her ideals more healthily. This is so incredibly impressive considering the environment he was in not not even a year ago. Ayanokoji's self-regulation and emotional control are also monstrous. He has never once lost control of himself or has extremely broken composure, which is especially impressive when you consider that he has faced expert cold readers such as Tsukishiro. Ayanokoji's control over his emotions is so strong that he can intentionally allow people to read his thoughts as a way to misdirect or mislead others into perceiving him a certain way. This is most evident in Year 2 Volume 4, where he analyzes that Tsukishiro has read 99% of his thoughts, yet he affirms that the remaining 1% is still hidden. He is confident that Tsukishiro has not yet analyzed that part of his mind. This means that Ayanokoji has the ability to control the perceivable thoughts in his mind whenever he wants. Needless to say, this guy is a monster in manipulation and EQ. One of Ayanokoji's other strongest points is his logical and abstract reasoning ability. Despite not having any experience initially due to staying in a white room for most of his life, Ayanokoji possesses exceptional ability as a detective. For instance, back during the first island exam in Year 1, Ayanokoji was able to deduce and break down Ryuen's entire strategy and deal of allying with Class A just by observing that Ibuki had dirt under her fingernails, allowing him to draw multiple inferences about her being a spy for Class C and Ryuen sending her after Class D. This allowed him to swiftly counterattack Class C and Class A with the implementation of his exam-winning strategy in a blink of an eye. Ayanokoji also figured out how the S system worked within the first day or two entering NHS, which is nothing short of absolutely impressive to do. Ayanokoji also solved the VIP pattern of the Zodiac exam through inductive reasoning, leveraging an absurd amount of abstract reasoning to perform it without much help. We also see Ayanokoji subsequently being able to deduce that Ryuen and Kanzaki made a deal during the Zodiac exam in Year 1 Volume 4 by observing the movements of the points in the classes during the entirety of the exam, which allowed him to further deduce and anticipate their strategies for the future through his precise observation throughout the exam. Deductions like these were crucial in misdirecting and leading Ryuen on throughout the X arc, resulting in the famous confrontation between the two of them in Year 1 Volume 7. Skipping a little bit forward, we'll see his immense detective skills in Year 2, when Hosen brandishes a knife toward him after beating up Tsudo and Horikita. Right now, Hosen has just declared that he would stab and kill Ayanokoji if Horikita didn't fork up 2 million private points to conclude their negotiation. The situation is getting out of hand, and Hosen is winding up to stab him, but Ayanokoji doesn't falter. In that instant, he can immediately observe that the knife Hosen is holding is his kitchen knife, and thus deduces that Hosen is planning to stab himself with the knife to frame it on him. So he doesn't let Hosen do that, and instead lets Hosen stab him with the knife, forcing a bloodstained contract where Hosen is forced to partner up with Ayanokoji for the partner exam if he doesn't want to get expelled. He also deduces that Ichika was the person who tried to set him up in this scenario, also figuring out with his key observation that Ichika and Hosen teamed up to potentially expel him in Hosen's case and test him in Ichika's case. This led him to make strong inferences about the possibility that Ichika was one of the secret white room students well before she confronted him directly in the second island exam. Not only that, but he's also an expert at creating profiles of others. One of his most impressive profiling feats yet is critically underlooked in his profiling of Taka Yagami. It took many volumes of information gathering and psychoanalysis to concretely deduce that Takia was indeed the other white room student next to Ichika and thus needed to be expelled, which he did so efficiently and layered through his love letter plan. But truly, the scariest thing about Ayanokoji next to his adaptability is the absolute scope and depth of his foresight. Ayanokoji's foresight isn't just a skill, it's a chilling display of strategic mastery that transcends mere prediction. It's as if he holds a crystal ball into the future, meticulously crafting intricate plans that unfold with surgical precision. His ability to foresee not just the immediate consequences, but also the ripple effects of his actions is always inspiring and unnerving, painting him as a puppeteer pulling the strings in a grand, intricate dance of manipulation. In his hands, the future becomes a canvas upon which he paints his schemes, each stroke deliberate and each move calculated, and each outcome something so meticulously crafted to his advantage. Stated by Chairman Sakayanagi, Ayanokoji's ability to foresee nearly every logical outcome that can come along within his scope of foresight is absolutely insane. Not many characters can boast about his ability to calculate risks, assess gains versus losses, and make appropriate plans and contingencies to ensure his safety. Right now, we're about to see the culmination of Ayanokoji's hard work in carefully aligning everything over the past 2 years to switch classes and begin his future plans in NHS. It will be truly chilling to see just what the genius of adaptability has in store for us. So, Who wins? Ultimately, this discussion won't have a definitive answer for a very long time, because it's the god of a new world versus a mere high school kid, a genius of adaptability who has consistently shown his intelligence through complex schemes versus a Death Note merchant who got outsmarted by a rip-off L. There are many ways to see this matchup, but I believe a certain character seems to edge out. Kiyotaka Ayanokōji. I think Ayanokoji has a better chance of outsmarting Light, as evidenced by Volume 0. This guy's intelligence is absolutely insane, and it appears as though he has even more untapped potential left to unlock once he becomes an adult. Still, even now, he has shown unrealistic levels of adaptability by being able to change his entire persona and way of living in only weeks. Years of living as a lab rat to a functioning teenager in society, which means that he won't have much trouble cognitively adapting to Light's creative schemes. Ayanokoji also shows more diverse forms of reasoning. He's typically in a shadow or detective-like position, preferring to observe meticulously before acting. In terms of overall intelligence, Ayanokoji should take this without any issue. Manipulation and especially deception can get tricky to argue for, as there are arguments for either character, but I believe that whoever takes this category, the other person is not far behind, although I still think Ayanokoji takes this category ultimately. Also, Ayanokoji has much better emotional intelligence than Light. Light has a tendency to act especially arrogant or lose control when victory is just within his grasp, due to his nearsighted view when he smells victory, whereas this is opposite to Ayanokoji's behavior. The main crux in how Ayanokoji would most likely win is due to Light's massive god complex and hubris, which an expert psychoanalyst like him would absolutely love to exploit. So ultimately, Koji solos.